everybody. We're doing our first podcast, and this is really going to be focused on ways to educate you, the customers, and bringing people in, whether it's sales guys or crew guys, people who are experts on the post frame construction, to really talk about their experiences and things that they've learned that we can pass to you. So today we have Josh Depew and Jimmy Terry. They're going to kind of introduce themselves on how long they've been at FBI, what their roles are, and the experience that they've gained from that. And then we're going to jump into a couple topics today in this podcast. So Josh?
Yeah, I'm Josh. I am the project sales consultant around kind of Tippecanoe County, Carroll County, a little bit further south. When I first started with FBI, it was about 5 years ago, and I actually was the inside sales manager. And then I kind of enjoyed the whole sales process and kind of forced my way and said, let me sell some of these buildings. So I've been an actual project sales consultant now for about 3.5, 4 years. So
awesome. How about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm Jimmy Terry, and I'm one of the project sales consultants here in Northern Indiana. I started in the company 25 years ago as a crew foreman, was managing a construction crew out of the Winnemac, Indiana area. And as that business model grew up there, the need for more sales and stuff grew to the Northern Indiana. So I've currently been doing sales for the last couple of years.
Awesome. So the topic we're going to take their expertise and pull out is going to be, as they've dealt with hundreds of buildings, what are a couple building features that they don't think you should build a building without? So that can be a wide variety of things. So I asked these guys and they thought about it. So I'm going to let Jimmy, what would you say is one feature that you would never build a building without, and why?
Mm-hmm. Well, no doubt about it. So all buildings start with a good foundation. So the posts, the columns that we use at FBI, I would not go any other route. Our laminated columns, the way we build them, the chemicals that we use to treat them, they last a lot longer than a lot of our competitors' treated columns. And I've, personally, I've had the opportunity to go back and repair, columns from other builders, and even, 25, 30 years ago, before we started using the type of column that we have now, those columns just don't last in the soil, and they start to deteriorate. The way that we build our columns at FBI, like with the individually treated lumbers, and then we laminate them together, not only is it stronger, but it just lasts a lot longer just because of the way it's built. Anyone who's ever done any kind of deck or anything like that on their back porch of their house or worked in construction, you can cut into like a 4x4 or a 6x6, and you notice that it's not treated all the way through. So just the perimeter of it's treated. So once that moisture starts to get in there, the column actually starts rotting from the inside out. So definitely the one thing that I would not ever do is use anything other than a 3-ply or 4-ply laminated column that's treated individually.
So going with the laminated column, Jimmy, what are a couple other approaches you might see for a column on a post frame building?
So another great solution for that, and a lot of homes that we're seeing in these pole building style homes, they're using what they call a permacolumn. It's a concrete post. It's super strong. It's got like a rebar cage, reinforced cage in it with a very high density concrete slurry mix. It's got a steel bracket on it. It's a forever foundation. It could actually be probably classified as a concrete foundation. If you're borrowing money, big banks and stuff like that, they love the idea of that type of foundation because it'll never rot. It is forever. They are a little more money than our standard laminated column, but again, the crews like to install them. They make the work easy. They make it easier for the concrete people to pour the concrete for the floor of the building, and again, they last forever. So that's a huge advantage.
Then a lot of people like to talk about bracketing to concrete. What are some advantages and disadvantages to that?
So, one advantage of bracketing down to a concrete foundation, if a person's going to put a building like on a crawl space or a basement, or just even a slab that has a concrete brackets around the perimeter. One advantage, I guess, would be obviously the strength and longevity. You don't have the problem with the column deteriorating or anything like that underground. Disadvantage would be the cost. So now we have to have a huge footer around the entire building. And some of our buildings, you don't have to drive around too many parts of the state here and see that post frame buildings can be pretty good size. So to put a foundation around the entire perimeter of a post frame building can be pretty costly. So try to avoid that if we can. The good part about bracketing down is sometimes you can put columns in multiple locations fairly easy without having to dig through frozen ground or stuff like that.
And for those who might not know, when you say a footer, how deep are you talking there?
Well, we got to get below the frost line. So most areas in the state of Indiana, the frost line is going to be 36 inches. So you're digging down 4 feet around the perimeter of a building, and with a 8 to 12 inch thick concrete, literally little miniature wall around the perimeter, and excavation costs go up. Obviously, concrete's not cheap, and the labor to do that, all that stuff is kind of costly.
Yeah, it's a lot of concrete, right? You had 4 feet around that. Thanks, Jimmy. So, Josh, how about you? What would you say if you think about what's one thing you wouldn't build without?
I'm going to go a different way from Jimmy. Jimmy's obviously been here a lot longer than me, so he really loves that technical stuff. He's seen buildings from 25 years ago. I'm take more of the aesthetic approach. I would, depends on the territory, depends on the budget. I love porches. So a lot of the suburban market, they want a porch on there.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Sometimes it's just, I just need something just to keep me out of the rain, just over the door, which is great. But there's so many options, right? So does it continue off the roof line? Is it a step down? You can change the ends, the way it looks on there, whether it's just a gable, whether it's a hip, it looks really nice. And then you can go into even more options. What's the depth of that thing? What are you doing for the columns? We do certainly a few different things where we can wrap it in steel, make it look nice. We can wrap it in cedar, same thing for the header, all that good stuff. Or I have a lot of customers too, especially for commercial projects. They'll actually do some sort of cedar wrap, and they do like the stone on the bottom. You can do that to match your house. So you got a lot of options on there. The one thing I will say that I think is mandatory when doing a porch is having a soffit ceiling under there, right? So you can do your can lighting, you can do some fans or whatever you want to do for that. But if you don't have that, you may be going for a rustic look. But I don't love the rustic approach of having birds up there nesting on stuff. The last thing you want when you're sitting there looking up is the birds come down at
Yeah,
you.
bird poop isn't really the rustic.
Yeah,
that most people
so
are going
it's
for, right?
it might smell authentic, but yeah, it certainly it can make a mess. So
Yeah.
I love working through the porches, through corners and different sizing. It certainly can dress up a building pretty easily.
So it has functional, right? Get you out of the rain. You can see people put their nice chairs and rocking chairs in there, and they can see sunsets or watch their kids play in the yard. But most times people think of a pole barn, it's a pretty much a box building, right? You can have drop downs in different areas, but in your opinion, from an aesthetic, what does a porch bring to a pole barn aesthetically?
Yeah, so the term I always use is it changes it from a machine shed, right? Now sometimes that's all you need is a machine shed. It's an ag shop, you're throwing it in there, you got sliding doors, dirt floor, you don't care. But if it's going to be a place that you're hosting and you're going to have people coming up to, or you can see it from the house or whatever, it's beautiful landscape around you, it just adds so much curb appeal. And so, yeah, you get out of the rain a lot, but yeah, to your point, right? You can have your rocking chairs up there like you're at Cracker Barrel. You can have, some firewood. You can do all that stuff underneath there. It just brings a lot to the building.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So, Jimmy, I'll give you, each one of you guys are going to do two. So what would be your second thing you wouldn't build without?
No, there's no doubt about it. The second one of mine would be the skin of the building. So we're talking about the steel that goes on the roof, the steel that goes on the sides. Again, I had the advantage of being, in this industry for 25 plus years, and it used to be pretty popular, and it's still, a preferred choice of a lot of our, competition is a siliconized polyester paint system that is applied to the steel. Well, it fades, in the sunlight and the weather conditions we have here in northern Indiana. That siliconized polyester paint starts to fade 6-7 years after it's applied. It drives me crazy when I drive down the road and I see a building that has had siliconized polyester painted siding or roofing on it, and the customer has either added on to it, because what's one thing that we know happens with these buildings, no one builds them big enough to start with. So they add on to them, but then the steel that they put on doesn't match because their existing steel was siliconized polyester paint, and it fades. Or if you get some kind of damage, if you get some tree falls on your building and damages some of your roof steel, or somebody runs into your building, it damages some of the siding, or if you want to go put a new door in, whatever the case may be, to go try to match that steel up that's 7, 8, 9, 10 years old with new steel, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it really takes the value of the building, especially going back to what you said, Josh, the aesthetics of it and the curb appeal, it just drives it down. So, I've made the mistake myself. I've got 3 post frame buildings. The very first one I built is not Kynar paint. It's a siliconized polyester paint, and my other two buildings are Kynar, and they look so much nicer, even though they're all about the same age. My buildings that have Kynar paint and finish on the steel, they still look brand new. Versus my other one that's about the same age. It looks 10, 15 years older than the other one. So Kynar paint is a must for me. It's a must.
And you live that, sounds like, right, from
Absolutely.
example. And that's a unique one because you might not, when you build your building or building a new building, it's not really going to be noticeable in the first month, year, week of your building. So it's kind of one of those things that people can talk about and say, but it's like, I'll believe you in 10 years when I can see it maybe. And how do you actually show that difference that you might not be able to see right away when you're building a new building?
Yeah. So one of the things that I tell people all the time is just to, drive around and you know what you're looking at. If you see a building that looks like it's an off gray, or if it's an off green, chances are that if it's faded so much, it was a siliconized polyester paint. And if you see a nice brand new building that's crisp and shiny, and you see that building is 10, 15 years old still, then that's the difference in the Kynar finish versus the siliconized polyester paint. The Kynar, it's more expensive, but you pay for what you get, and it's a product that's going to last for a long time, and it looks like it's new, 10, 15 years after it's installed.
For sure. Awesome. How about you, Josh? What would be your second thing?
Well, actually, I was trying to kick around between interior stuff and exterior, but you bringing up paint, I just kind of thought about the overall, finish again of the building. Kind of brings me to the paint, the colors, the wainscot, and that's kind of one thing I get all the time is people are always up in the air on wainscot, and it's a super cheap option. It can be to really, really dress up your building. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it's that 3 foot of essentially steel that just runs along the bottom side of your building. You can choose all sorts of different colors with it, but normally, right, you pick a dark tone for the roof, and then you have a lighter siding. Then normally your trim and your wainscot's dark. So it just adds a lot. Again, kind of takes away from that machine shed look to it. Has a nice finish to it. It kind of breaks the eye level a little bit, and it does have some functional purposes as well, right? So if you've got teenagers, or if you're not great backing up that tractor, or if you just bought that RV and that's why you're building this barn, odds are you're gonna bump the building at some point, and when you do hit it, you're normally gonna hit it in that bottom 3 feet. So if you've got a building for your RV, you've got a 14-foot overhead door, it's 16 foot plus your gable sometimes. If you hit that thing and you don't have that wainscot, you're replacing that whole thing.
It's a big piece of steel.
Yeah. And so you're going to be paying somebody to come out, which FBI does have a repair and renovation team. We'll come do it. But if it's only a 3-piece little, 3-foot piece of steel, you can call me. We can send you one, or you can come up to the office, grab one, do it yourself. So it can actually save you a lot of cost too. Because one sheet of steel, quite frankly, is going to cost the same almost as the entire wainscot. So
for sure, and it does really break up the building, right?
Yeah.
Which means like your style you're looking for.
Yep.
Can make a difference. So that's funny. Yeah, you went, as you mentioned earlier, you went real structural longevity of it, and Josh, you went more of the aesthetical approach of it, which is what I love when you bring it together, right?
Yep.
Like they both have their own values and something to look for. And like you guys would say, both of these things can add more money to your building. Wainscot might be a little less of an option than a porch might be. Laminated column and Kynar can add some money to your project. So it might not be for everybody, right? But things that are important to keep in mind. I'll give you a bonus one for myself that I would never build without is overhangs. And that's something I do a lot of buildings, and there's aesthetic and functional value, I think, to an overhang. One, from an overhang, you can do 1 or 2 feet typically, depending on your size. That allows that airflow going up into your building through the ridge vent that can help reduce condensation, but also it just gives it so much more dimension. Same with the wainscoting, just makes your building a lot nicer if it's by your home or anything like that. I think that's a can't miss. So if you're doing a wainscoting, you're doing a porch, you're doing overhangs, you've got Kynar, you've got a laminated column, you're on your way to a pretty solid building. Yeah. I would say. What do you guys think?
I agree with you. I agree with you. You get those 5 things, and you've got yourself well on your way to a nice building for a long time.
Yeah. Anything you guys want to add, or any thoughts in addition to that?
Give us a call if you need advice.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot to it that you can add, right? I mean, depending on your budget, depending on what it's for, cupolas and how many windows, I mean, you can really dress this thing up. But at the end of the day, to Jimmy's point, functionality and the structural integrity of the building is going to be your most important. All the other stuff is just extra. So
that's the beauty of post frame. It can really meet any need, from a house to a commercial shop, like you said, do an ag shop, to really anything. That's the beauty of a post frame building. It can meet a lot of needs.
You know, you think about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the buildings that we were building then, how simple they were. They were just basic structures like you said, machine sheds. And now, you know, society and technology and engineering and design and products have turned these things into multi-million-dollar facilities that can be whatever you dream of them being. So that's the exciting thing about our company as well, is like, man, we have the design team that can put about any option you want on there, and you know, just create that whole atmosphere that you need for your building.
Well, I know that you said that you love more than anything when you get a couple that brings up a Pinterest picture and they gives it to you, and you love pricing those up.
You betcha, that's the greatest. Bring them on.
They can look beautiful, right? But understanding what that total project
That's
scope
right.
might be disconnect. So really quick, I'm gonna do one bonus round. I didn't tell them I was gonna ask this question, but I thought I would. So what would be one really quick don't? What would you say don't do from your guys' experiences, real quick?
I would
I'll put them on the spot, as I said.
Don't do vinyl back insulation.
Okay, yeah.
Depending on the insulation that you want on the inside, right? There's a lot of costs associated with vinyl back, with Thermax, with all that stuff, and which all serves a purpose. But quite frankly, the appearance, it's not all there as far as the longevity or the integrity of it. If it's not perfect, you know, it's not going to look great. You might as well get a steel liner package. It allows so much more. You know, you can do plywood on the bottom, you can do OSB, you can do acoustical, whatever it is to eliminate noise. So there's a lot better options that really don't cost that much more instead of just doing plain insulation.
It's better installation too in a lot of cases.
Absolutely,
Right?
yeah.
How about you,
Mine, no doubt, Kurt, would be don't use 4 foot on center or closer trusses. And the reason why, I get asked that all the time. People say, well, Jimmy, there's more lumber in the building. It would be stronger. Well, you would think you would be. But there's other advantages of having a truss that's spaced out farther. And one of my go-tos is always the heel height. You know, we think about all of the energy costs that go into maintaining these buildings, you know, like this building we're in, you know, the heating and cooling of this building. And the taller heel that we put out there on the at the wall connection, the more insulation that we can get in there versus a you know, a lot of times a 4 foot or 3 foot on center trusses, the heels are not as tall, so they can't get a full R38 insulation across the ceiling. And where I live in northern Indiana, I mean, the last thing you want to do is be pumping heat into that building and it going right out through the ceiling. So do not do a 4 foot on center truss.
That'll cost you long term, right?
It will cost you long term.
For sure. Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Thanks, Jimmy,
Yeah, you're
for
welcome.
joining us. Hope this was informational for you and kind of help you guys think through your building process as you start down that road. So feel free to check out more videos we have on YouTube, and we'll hopefully see you guys soon.